back here with us on Urban Debate on Mirror Now this evening. It's official now. Elon Musk, the boss of Tesla, is going to become the boss of micro-blogging platform Twitter as well. He's going to acquire social giant Twitter at $44 billion. Tesla boss is set to make sweeping changes on how Twitter really operates. In a tweet, Musk has suggested enhancing the platform with new features like defeating spam bots, making open source algorithms, authenticating all humans, edit button and flag bugs. Responding to the critics from left and right over efforts to mediate misinformation on the platform, Elon added, and I quote, "Free speech is the bedrock of democracy, and Twitter is a square where matters vital to the future of humanity are debated," unquote. What is even more interesting to see what happens going forward is Elon Musk's take on free speech. Because on many occasions, Elon Musk has tweeted on free speech and how Twitter was not considered one such platform. Let's go across to our guests who are joining us on the broadcast this evening to understand what this deal, what this takeover really mean for Twitter and millions of Twitter users. Joining us on the broadcast this evening is Mahesh Murthy, venture capitalist and head Pinstrom. We also have with us Mishi Chaudhary, technology lawyer on the broadcast. Good evening to both of you. Thank you very much for joining us on Urban Debate on Mirror Now this evening. Mahesh Murthy, we had a discussion a couple of days ago as well when Tesla boss had actually given this best and final offer to Twitter. But now, after adopting a poison pill, Twitter decided to accept this offer. Did that come as a surprise to you? And what would it now mean for Twitter and Twitter users?
Yeah, it didn't quite come as a surprise because despite the poison pill, I think, Musk had tweeted out saying, "Love Me Tender," the Elvis song, which basically was a reference to the fact that he was prepared to take a tender issue direct to the share owners. And he had already quoted many large shareholders who all said that they would side with him. So essentially, when pretty much the board of Twitter, and then he also tweeted saying, "Look, there's a board earning $3 million a year. When I buy it, that'll be $3 million of savings because I'm going to fire the board," right? With all of that against it, the board couldn't really, I think, take it anymore. The stock price wasn't reaching $54, which is what Musk kind of tendered. They could not find an alternative buyer. Pretty much they capitulated and said, "Okay, fine, we're done with this. We're selling it." So I think that was not much of a surprise. But I think I have a slight point of disagreement with what many online are saying. For most people, they said, "Look, it's only worth 44 billion. Tesla's worth $1 trillion. SpaceX worth half a billion. This is chump change." That may be so, but my own personal belief is that Elon Musk believes that this is far more important, Twitter, to humanity than all of Tesla and all of SpaceX maybe put together. So while those may make the revenues, those may get the valuations, his ability to quote unquote do, change the world, which is what billionaires say they want to do, is much higher with Twitter. Hence this entire point of saying, I'll bring back freedom of speech. What does freedom of speech mean? It means that, he will probably re-platform Donald Trump. He will re-platform Kangana Rangot in India. He will re-platform, the leftists who've been locked out. He will re-platform Naxalites. He will re-platform communists. So there's going to be good news and bad. So he will re-platform the people who were, accused of spreading misinformation. But more importantly, while he platformed them, he says he's going to take away the tools to spread misinformation, which is he's going to kill the bots. So if you're out there, you know that there are enough bots, 1,000, if I say something good or bad against a party, 1,000 bots will come, will be sent towards me. And those are the ones that will be killed. So essentially two things, the bots that kind of attack your right to free speech, whether it is rightist free speech or leftist free speech, will be controlled. And secondly, you'll also see a lot of Twitter follow counts drop. So there are people, including senior politicians from India who have tens of millions of followers, and those counts will drop drastically because those counts are also bot counts. I think you will see these changes happen. It may be a small chump change economically for Musk, but it's going to be a massive change that he thinks he can bring about for humanity by saying this is the public town square where things get discussed.
Interesting. So there's going to be good news and there's going to be bad news. Of course, many are quite happy about this edit button that he might come with, once the deal is over, once he actually becomes the boss of this micro blogging site. But Mishi Chaudhary, Leaving Twitter simultaneously is trending on social media, on Twitter only. People now are talking about leaving Twitter. What do you think this deal means for Twitter and its 396 million users?
So I think that whenever something like this happens, we've seen these trends of leaving one platform or the other. They don't really last much because the network effects of such businesses ensure that once a lot of people have joined it, that even if a few people leave, they will continue to come back to it. We have seen in the past also this happened. There is a decentralized solution called Mastodon, which at least ensures that all of us have much more control over our profiles. And it's good that such various alternatives get an energy boost when such things trend. But whether that's going to be last or not, it's a thing which we will observe later on. In such social networking things, it's always winner takes it all kind of an approach, just because of the network effects. What it means for the users, I think that the most important thing is because free speech obviously is getting talked about, and it's because people like Musk have the money and can rage buy, unlike people like us who also think that perhaps we may have solutions for it. But honestly, the most important thing is that the company will go private. When you're a public company, you're very much prone to the pressures of Wall Street or the Lal Street or wherever you are. So Wall Street, which waits for your earnings report, and every quarter there's something, and the stock prices goes up and down, and the revenue really matters and profitability matters. And Twitter has been sporadically profitable and really not. And it has this ability to punch much beyond its weight. It's a much smaller social media network in contrast to Facebook or various products that Meta has. But historically, politically, it has much more influence over how the world's discourse works out. That is why it is also subject to a lot more of pull and push here. When the company goes private, then you can experiment with a lot of things, whether it is about bots, whether it is about spam, and you don't have to always worry about how the share price is going to reflect on what actions you take. Having said that, that doesn't mean that all problems are going to be solved. Mr. Musk says that he's an absolutist about free speech. Twitter also once was an absolutist. 10, 12 years ago, Twitter's co-founder said that Twitter is the free speech wing of the free speech party. That party didn't last for very long because the nation states, countries, governments became much more powerful and they caught up with internet. In India, in other places, we've seen what leaders can also do in terms of weaponizing speech, how hate can be spread, how misinformation and disinformation can not only be spread by certain accounts like bots or others, but which amplify that. But actual credible people can also do certain things which may not actually go down very well in terms of how we understand. Now, whether he's going to be able to fight that or not, we will see. Twitter's legal team has been very active. We also see threats from the government. Government of India, we saw that some time back when the IT minister and Twitter were at each other's, there were police people who showed up on an evening at Twitter's offices. I don't know what they were trying to do, but that's also a threat tactic for the employees. So I think what's happening, the important part is that they will be able to experiment and do much more now that it will be a private company between 4 to 6 months once the deal is done. But to expect that we will go back to 12 years back of free speech, free for all, that's going to be a much harder path to walk on that Mr. Musk is right now playing it out in public for.
Interesting point you've made. And Mahesh Murthy, once Twitter becomes a private company after the deal is over, in your opinion, how will this change? How will the platform really change? Because then it will be controlled by one person, not a board, really. And do you think things are going to change for good on Twitter if it will be controlled by one person?
Sure. My answer to both is actually a pretty vehement yes. So I think you've got to see, for example, Mishi is somebody I've known for a while, and Mishi talked about the levers of power that are used to engage to shut to threaten Twitter. So Twitter, the India rep on Twitter has been FIR'd, arrested, has had to run away, all of that stuff multiple times, and so on and so forth. But it's not just true in India, it's true in a multiple set of countries. It's true in Russia, it's true in many other countries as well, right? So I think 2 or 3 changes will happen. One, because, for example, Twitter is currently dependent on ad revenues, and to book ad revenues in a large advertising market like India, you probably need a local office out here. And if you have a local office out here, that office has to be, subject to the rules of India. Now, imagine, Musk is somebody who says that I don't really care for ad revenue. And, like you said, Twitter has about 400 million users, and a simple calculation, if 15% of them, 60 million of them pay $5 a month, that's $300 million, that's 3.6 billion, that's Twitter costs currently with a 20% profit. And of course, those costs will come down. So Twitter can be hugely profitable even if 10-15% of its people, of the users, even pay $5 a month, right? So if and when that happens, and we hear noises that something like that will happen, they will not need ad revenue. They will not need ad revenue. They can shut the offices. If they can shut the offices, guess what? You can't issue a takedown notice in India. You can't issue a takedown notice in Russia. Who do you issue to? Right? Right? So that's one thing that will happen. The second thing that's again interesting, there are 3 things interesting. The second thing interesting is that look at Musk's SpaceX delivering internet to Ukraine via Starlink satellites. So the interesting thing is Ukraine said, if you're delivering internet, block Russian channels. Right? And he said, no, nothing, no, you're going to get everything. And so neither the Russians can block Ukrainian content, and neither can Ukrainians block Russian content. So if Twitter is delivered via Starlink, which I don't see a reason why it won't be, at that point, you can't block it at the ISP level. So it becomes really a powerful, freedom of speech tool, which many autocrats near and dear, or even further, may not like. Third, Twitter's current market price is 44 billion, which is less than the European Union's bench level price of 65 billion, which means it does not come under European Union legislation. So it means they can do whatever they want. So once they take it private, you'll see many changes, not pleasing to many. So I think it'll be shocking in the short term, but my net belief is going to be good in the long term.
Okay, but like you mentioned earlier, the follower count might drop for some. So that's something that people, of course, are going to be quite concerned about. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us here on Urban Debate on Mirror Now this evening. We'll, of course, be tracking the story closely ahead as well. We'll keep our viewers updated on the kind of changes Elon's Twitter is going to have going forward.